That night, the small gallery glowed with the realization of a dream I had cherished for years. Each photograph on the walls was a part of me, an emotion captured in an image. There was a palpable anxiety mixed with the joy of finally sharing my art with friends, family, and a few connoisseurs. I smiled at the arriving guests, their warm greetings easing some of my nervousness. However, a slight apprehension lingered as my eyes searched for a specific face in the growing crowd. When Diana arrived, accompanied by her lively group, I felt a wave of warmth followed by an almost imperceptible chill. She radiated confidence, and her striking dress stood out in the gallery's atmosphere. Her hug was effusive, but her fingers squeezed my arm for a fraction too long, and the compliment that followed sounded slightly off. "Congratulations, Margaret. Who knew you had all this hidden away? The photos are interesting, very much your style." The ambiguity of the phrase left a brief feeling of unease. I forced a smile, trying to ignore the uncomfortable sensation, but the sparkle in my eyes had already dimmed a little. Throughout the evening, I tried to converse with people, eager to explain the stories behind my photographs, the inspirations that motivated them. But Diana's constant presence was a subtle disruption. She interrupted conversations, her loud laughter echoed through the space, and invariably, she directed the focus to herself, her own opinions and experiences always seeming more relevant. With each interruption, my smile became more strained, and the excitement gave way to a growing feeling of invisibility on my own night. Then the crucial moment approached. I was engaged in an encouraging conversation with an art critic, feeling a hint of validation in his words. That's when the melodious voice, but with a disingenuous tone of concern, cut through the air. "Oh, Margaret," Diana said, her voice projected to reach nearby ears. "I was just talking to a friend, Carla. She found some of your photos very similar to her own work." What a coincidence, right? A chill ran down my spine. My eyes met Diana's, searching for some sign of jest, but I found only a cold, calculating glint. In the next instant, Carla appeared, materializing the accusation with a rehearsed expression of indignation and some photos in her hands. "Yes," she stated with conviction. "These ideas, this composition, they're mine." Margaret must have seen them online. It hit me like a blow. The joy of the evening dissipated, replaced by a wave of shock, disbelief, and a sharp pain from the unexpected betrayal. The sound around me seemed to fade as I struggled to process the malice unfolding before me. At that moment, a sense of unreality washed over me. Diana's and that woman Carla's words echoed in my mind, cold and accusatory. I looked around and saw people's faces, some showing curiosity, others shock, and some even a vague compassion. But Diana's gaze, it carried a hint of triumph, a coldness that struck me deeply. I felt paralyzed, unable to formulate an immediate response. It was as if a blow had left me breathless, and the pain, a sharp stab in my chest, only began to manifest after the initial shock. A silent rage also grew within me, not the kind that fuels shouting, but the kind that feeds the need to prove the truth. I gathered my belongings with trembling hands, feeling the weight of the stares on me. I couldn't look anyone directly in the eye. I just wanted to disappear from there as quickly as possible. Each step seemed to require immense effort. The street outside was dark and silent, a stark contrast to the gallery's buzz moments before. I got into my car and sat there for a long time, staring blankly ahead, trying to organize the whirlwind of my thoughts. The following days were spent in isolation. My house became a silent refuge, a space where I could try to process what had happened. I avoided my phone, social media, anything that could revive the memory of that humiliating night. The accusation of plagiarism hung over me like a shadow, affecting my confidence and making every potential interaction a burden. However, amidst the sadness and confusion, a small doubt began to germinate in my mind. Something about the way everything happened felt forced, almost theatrical. The speed with which Carla presented the evidence, the certainty in Diana's tone, it all seemed too coordinated to be a coincidence. I began to revisit my past interactions with Diana, remembering her ambiguous comments about my work, that strange glint in her eyes when I shared some success. Small details that had previously gone unnoticed now fit into a disturbing pattern. It was then that I remembered Lucas. He had always been a friendly acquaintance, but never part of Diana's inner circle. On the day of the exhibition, I noticed that he had liked a comment Diana made on social media about what had happened, a message that implied justice had been served. However, Lucas's like was accompanied by a hesitant emoji, almost one of discomfort. I decided to risk reaching out. I sent Lucas a message, asking how he had perceived the situation at the opening. His reply was delayed and evasive, describing the event as unpleasant. But I sensed an opening in his hesitation. I pressed a little, mentioning my confusion and the feeling that everything had been premeditated. To my surprise, Lucas called me. His voice was low, almost a whisper. He confessed that he had always found Diana excessively competitive and had heard her make disparaging remarks about other artists before. And then, hesitantly, he mentioned a conversation he had overheard between Diana and a mutual friend, Ethan, about Diana having found a way to deal with my success. At the time, Lucas hadn't understood the meaning of the conversation, but now, in light of recent events, the pieces were starting to fall into place. That call with Lucas was like a ray of hope in the darkness. For the first time since the opening, I felt that perhaps I wasn't alone. The possibility of the truth coming to light rekindled a flame within me. I was determined to find out what had really happened. Lucas's information ignited a spark of hope within me, but also a dose of apprehension. Talking to Ethan seemed like the logical next step, but I didn't know how to approach him without alerting Diana or causing him to clam up. Lucas gave me Ethan's contact information and unfamiliar phone number and advised me to be cautious in my initial approach. I took several deep breaths before dialing the number. My voice sounded a little unsure when I introduced myself and mentioned that I was a friend of Lucas. I briefly explained the situation at my exhibition and, carefully, mentioned that Lucas had commented on a conversation Ethan might have overheard involving Diana. There was a hesitant silence on the other end of the line. Ethan seemed apprehensive, perhaps fearing getting involved in a conflict. In a calm and sincere tone, I explained that I wasn't looking for trouble, just trying to understand what had happened. I mentioned the pain and injustice of the accusation and how it was affecting my life and career. Slowly, I felt Ethan's resistance diminish. He eventually agreed to meet with me to talk, but insisted it be in a discreet and informal place. We met at a busy coffee shop in the city center, a place where we could talk without drawing too much attention. Ethan seemed nervous, looking around frequently. I began to explain the details of the opening and Carla's accusation, carefully observing his reaction. When I mentioned Diana's name, I noticed a slight hardening in his expression. Carefully, I asked about the conversation Lucas had mentioned. Ethan hesitated for a moment, as if weighing the consequences of his words. Finally, he sighed and began to speak. He confirmed that he had overheard a phone conversation of Diana's with a woman, in which Diana spoke about giving a scare to someone who was getting too big for their boots, and mentioned a payment for a service. Ethan hadn't paid much attention to the details at the time, but now, with what happened at my exhibition, he realized the connection. He even remembered Diana being particularly pleased and commenting something about shutting certain people up. Although he hadn't explicitly heard Carla's name, the description of the conversation and Diana's tone matched my experience perfectly. Ethan's confirmation was like a knife twisting in the wound, but it also gave me a grim clarity. It hadn't been a misunderstanding, it hadn't been a coincidence. Diana had premeditated it, plotted behind my back with the intention of humiliating me and damaging my career. The anger I had felt before intensified, mixed with a profound sense of betrayal by someone I had considered a friend. With the confirmation of the setup, I knew I needed to find concrete evidence to expose the truth. Ethan's word was important, but I needed something more tangible to confront Diana publicly. I began to think about all the interactions I had with Diana and Carla, searching for any clue that could lead me to the evidence I needed. The search for the truth became my priority, a faint light guiding me through the darkness of betrayal. Ethan's confirmation gave me a new sense of purpose. I wasn't paranoid. My intuition about Diana's premeditation was correct. Now, the priority was to find concrete evidence that could unmask the web of lies she had woven. I began to sift through my memories, searching for any interaction with Diana or Carla that might contain a clue. I remembered a casual conversation with Diana weeks before the exhibition, where she had asked some strange questions about my contacts in the art world and whether I had ever been accused of plagiarism before. At the time, I thought the questioning was just a little odd, but now, in light of recent events, it seemed to have a sinister undertone, as if she were planting the seeds of her future accusation. I began to scour my digital archives, looking for any communication with Diana that might reveal her envy or competitiveness. I found some old emails where she made subtle and derogatory comments about the work of other artists I admired, and some text messages where she minimized my achievements, disguising her criticisms as friendly advice. It was a subtle but revealing pattern. The real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. I remembered having exchanged a few messages with Carla on social media some time ago, even before I knew she knew Diana. We had commented on each other's work superficially. I decided to dig through those old messages, hoping to find something that could link them, and there it was. An exchange of messages a few days before my exhibition. I had mentioned being excited about the opening, and Carla replied with a vague, "That's great. Good luck." But, strangely, right after that, there was a deleted message. Using a message recovery tool, I managed to bring the content back. It was a message from Carla to Diana, with the following sentence: "Everything set for the plan? I already know what to say and how much they will pay me afterwards." The "they" was vague, but the mention of a payment and a plan, so close to the date of my exhibition, was incriminating. I felt a mixture of anger and a cold shiver as I read that message. The confirmation of Diana's premeditation was undeniable. She had not only publicly humiliated me, but had also paid someone else to participate in her charade. The extent of her malice was shocking. With this concrete proof in hand, I felt a cold determination take over me. I couldn't let this injustice go unpunished. I needed to expose the truth, not only to clear my name, but to show everyone Diana's true character. I began to plan my next steps, knowing that confrontation was inevitable and needed to be done at the right moment and in the most impactful way possible. Diana's web of lies was unraveling, and I was ready to reveal everything. With Carla's recovered message, the proof of Diana's setup was undeniable. The anger I felt transformed into a cold and calculated determination. I needed to choose the right moment and the appropriate stage to expose the truth in an impactful way. I knew that confronting Diana privately would not be enough. Her ability to manipulate and distort the facts was notorious. The truth needed to be revealed publicly. I considered several options and decided that an event where Diana was feeling confident and in the spotlight would be the ideal setting. I found out that she would be one of the guests of honor at the opening of a new wing in an important art gallery in the city, an event that would attract many influential figures from the art world, including critics, curators, and collectors. It was the perfect opportunity to confront her on her own terrain of vanity. In the days leading up to the event, I kept a low profile, sharing what I had discovered in my plan only with a few loyal friends. They offered me unconditional support, ready to stand by my side when the time came. The anxiety was palpable, but the certainty that I was doing the right thing gave me strength. On the night of the opening, the gallery was elegant and bustling. Diana, dressed stunningly, circulated with a radiant smile, soaking up the compliments and attention. She seemed to be at her peak, the image of the successful and admired artist. I waited for the right moment, observing her from afar as she gave interviews and posed for photos. When Diana was at the center of a small group of important people, including some art critics who had belittled my work after the accusation, I made my entrance. I walked with firm steps towards the event stage, the silence spreading through the area like a wave. Curious eyes turned to me, and the expression on Diana's face shifted from a radiant smile to a mask of forced surprise, followed by a flash of apprehension. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice clear and steady, echoing through the space. It's interesting to see how appearances can be deceiving and how envy can lead to acts of extreme malice. I would like to share the truth about what really happened at my opening and about the person who orchestrated a lie to try and destroy my career. With surprising calm, I began to narrate the events of that fateful night, recalling Carla's accusation and the way Diana endorsed it. Then, I revealed my conversation with Lucas and Ethan's confirmation of Diana's premeditation. Finally, I displayed the recovered text message from Carla, reading it aloud so that everyone could hear the irrefutable proof of the setup. As I spoke, Diana's mask began to crack. Her smile vanished, her face paled, and she tried to interrupt me with desperate denials and accusations. However, the evidence was clear and compelling, silencing her attempts to defend herself. Shock and disbelief spread across the faces of those present, replacing the admiration many had for Diana with repulsion and disappointment. The truth, finally, was coming to light. The silence that followed my exposé was almost deafening. Eyes were fixed on Diana, whose once radiant face now displayed a mixture of shock, anger, and shame. Her attempts to deny the truth sounded weak and desperate in the face of the evidence I had presented. Slowly, the reality dawned on those present. The image of the talented and successful artist that Diana had so carefully cultivated crumbled before their eyes. The reaction from the artistic community was immediate and, for me, incredibly comforting. Many of those present came to offer me support, expressing their outrage at Diana's actions and their admiration for my courage in exposing the truth. Critics who had previously doubted me after the accusation now looked at me with respect, some even apologizing for their hasty words. The isolation I had felt in the preceding weeks began to dissipate, replaced by a wave of solidarity and recognition. Diana, realizing the drastic change in the atmosphere and the judging looks surrounding her, eventually withdrew from the gallery, accompanied by a few who still showed her loyalty or perhaps just morbid curiosity. Her reputation, once so carefully cultivated, had been severely tarnished. The opportunities that had once seemed certain began to evaporate, and ostracism became her new reality in the art world. For me, the act of exposing the truth was liberating. The weight of the unjust accusation had been lifted, and I could finally breathe without the constant shadow of doubt hanging over me. The support I received showed me that integrity and honesty were still important values in that world. The relationship with Diana came to a definitive and silent end. There were no more attempts at contact, no apologies. For me, it was clear that that friendship had been a facade built on envy and manipulation. Moving away from her was essential to protect my peace and emotional well-being. In the months that followed, I immersed myself back into my work with a renewed passion. The painful experience taught me to value my art even more and to trust my own vision. New opportunities arose, and my photographs began to be recognized not only for my unique perspective, but also for the integrity of my journey. The scar of Diana's betrayal remained, but over time, the sharp pain gave way to a strengthened resilience. I learned to be more cautious in my relationships, to recognize the signs of toxicity, and to establish clear boundaries. The experience made me stronger and more confident in my own voice. My journey was not about seeking revenge, but about fighting for the truth and my integrity. By exposing Diana's malice, I not only cleared my name but also regained control of my narrative. The end of that story was not about Diana's downfall, but about my own rebirth and the construction of an authentic and true path in art and in life. Thank you for listening to Margaret's story. Throughout life, we discover that those who call themselves our friends don't always truly want our well-being. Margaret discovered this the hard way, but she knew how to rise again and get rid of a toxic friendship that only harmed her. Have you ever had an experience with toxic friendships? Share with us here in the comments. We would love to hear. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share this video to support us and subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming.